I've been paid over $35 million growing and scaling thousands of businesses around the world. I've worked with celebrities, I've worked with athletes, and I've worked with some of the world's top YouTube creators who have more than 20 million followers. All of these people pay a fortune for the advice that I'm about to give you in this video for free. Now, the problem with giving you this for free is that people tend to not value things that are given to them freely. So I want you to engage in a silly little activity before we get started. I want you to close your eyes and imagine that you've just transferred me $10,000 in order for what I'm about to share with you. How would you show up to the next 10, 15, 20 minutes? I'm going to take you through a process in 5 steps that has taken thousands of people from having a vague idea as to what they might do in a directional way, right through to very specifically monetizing their intellectual property. Step 1 is to create a product that has proof behind it. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to imagine yourself now, and I want you to think back over the last 5 years. We're looking for little magical moments that we're going to call proof stories. And proof stories are really powerful stories that contain intellectual property. So what does a proof story have in it? A proof story is a time in the last 5 years where you did something special and it would be of interest to a certain type of person. We call that person an ICP, an ideal customer persona. So something special that is of interest to an ideal customer persona. You achieved a quantifiable outcome that you've given a name to that outcome, and you can explain how you did it step by step. So think about the last 5 years. There was a time that you did something special that is of interest to a certain type of person, an ICP, an ideal customer persona. You can quantify the outcome and give the outcome a name, and you can explain it step by step. So for example, there was a time where I was working with some of the world's top CEOs and speakers to put them on a stage and make them famous and launch their books and make them best-selling authors. And we called that outcome becoming a key person of influence, and I had 5 steps on how to do that. It was something special. It was relevant to anyone who was an entrepreneur or a CEO. We could quantify the outcomes that they were getting. We gave it a name, a key person of influence, and we created the 5-step methodology for becoming a key person of influence. So based on this little proof story, I was able to write the book Key Person of Influence, which became a global business accelerator. So that's a great example of finding a proof story. Another example would be Ronsley Vaz. Ronsley was running a restaurant that was losing a ton of money and he was almost $500,000 in debt. However, at the same time, what he had done is created a very successful podcast around food. And what he decided to do is leverage that proof story to set up an audio marketing agency. Within 30 days, he'd signed up his first major clients using this whole formula. And within 6 months, he'd paid down the debt and had over $20,000 cash in the bank after paying off his debt. And all of it started by identifying a proof story that met this criteria where he had done something special that was of interest to an ideal customer persona with a quantifiable outcome that we can name and a set of steps that we can follow to get that outcome. So the first thing that I want you to imagine you've paid me to do is to direct you to create a proof story from your last 5 years. Now, you may have multiple proof stories, right? And what I would imagine is that there will actually be a little bit of a theme to some of them. And if you've got more of them, that's even better. So what we want to do is we want to consider that this proof story is the basis of what we call intellectual property. Intellectual property is the unique stuff that comes from your story. It's your story with your emotions, with your steps, with your take on things, right? That's your intellectual property. The name that you give it, you could even register that name and it could be associated to you and your business. So now we've got the intellectual property, we need to turn it into 2 products. The first product is called a product for prospects and the second product is called a core offering. The product for prospects is where people can learn about your proof story and they can learn about what special thing happened, who is that relevant for, what is the quantifiable outcome, what are the steps that you would take and what do we call that, what's the name, so people learn about that. And the core offering is where they get it delivered, right? They actually get it done for them or it happens, right? They become part of this proof story. They get to replicate part of the proof story. So we learn and then we get it delivered. So the product for prospects could be that people learn through a webinar. It could be that people learn through an online assessment. It could be that people learn through an online mini course. In some ways, they need to learn about your intellectual property and then they get the intellectual property delivered into their lap. Now, it could be delivered through an agency which does it for them. It could be delivered through software. It could be delivered through a physical product, right? Or it could be delivered through consulting, right? All of those ways are delivery mechanisms, right? Those are ways that people get the delivery of the intellectual property. How do we make sure that we've productized those? The product for prospects needs a landing page that is online and the core offering needs a slide deck or a brochure that explains what gets delivered. So the product for prospects is a landing page that tells you what you need to do to learn, and a core offering is a slide deck or a brochure that tells you what is going to be delivered and how much is it going to be. Step 2 is we need to get attention. Now, in school, they told you do not be an attention seeker, but in today's economy, you must get attention. Your entire business is downstream from attention. If you can't get attention, you don't have a business. So we have to ramp up the amount of attention that you get. So you're going to need to be noticed, you're going to have to become known, and you're going to have to become rated. Let's explain those. So the first step is to become noticed. Noticed means that people clock you, they notice you, they recognize that you exist. Previously, they had no idea that you existed, they had no idea that you were even around, but now they've noticed you. The research says that people notice you for the first time when they see you for the 11th time. So you've got to put out 11 pieces of short content that is going to get noticed. People will see that you've been dropping little bits of social media content into their feed every day, and by the time they see you 11 times, that's where they really start to notice that you exist. So noticing you is about short form content, right? It's all about little short posts. It could be short posts on LinkedIn. It could be short posts on Instagram. It could be image carousels, right? Any of that stuff that people can just go, oh, there's an image, there's a post, there's a little video, short, punchy content that people see. Now, the data also says that people have to see these 11 pieces of content within 90 days, which means if you're posting only once a week, there's just enough time for people to notice you every 90 days. But if you missed out on 1 or 2 posts, they're not going to see you. The people who get noticed, they post every single day. Now, if you post every single day, people are going to notice you every 2 weeks, right? Every 2 weeks, new people are going to have noticed you. But you have to post every single day in order to clock up 11 pieces of content that people could have seen within 2 weeks, so that they can then notice you. People see you for the first time when they see you for the 11th time. So post every single day to minimize the amount of time that it takes for people to notice you. Some of the biggest people that you follow, some of your heroes online, they're posting 5 to 10 pieces of content every single day because they want to get noticed more often. So the next thing that has to happen is that people need to know you, right? So they've noticed you, now they need to get to know you. So over here is notice, now they get to know you. And the research here says that people need to spend 2 to 7 hours with you in order to get to know you. What we need to do is create something called long form content. Long form content is any long posts, right? So maybe 1,500 words in a report or a really long post on LinkedIn, or it could be a long video like this one that you're watching here, where you get to know my content because I'm explaining it step by step. So long form content is where people get a sense that they know you. Some of the best long form content is where you appear as a guest on a podcast. And if you haven't done so, I want you to watch the video where I talk about how to become a guest on a podcast, and I'll link to that below. Long form content could also be where people attend a live workshop. They maybe see you in person giving a live keynote speech. It could be where they attend something with you on Zoom, or where they watch a recording of some of that content. And one of the best pieces of long form content is a book. There is a reason that authors end up with fans all over the world, because people are reading their book, and that is a great piece of long form content. So the key is that people have 2 to 7 hours worth of content that they can access if they want to. They've noticed you with your short form content, and now they want the long form content to get to know you. So you've got to have that available for them. Now, the final piece here is that you become rated. Now, what does it mean to be rated? Well, the word rated means, if I ask you how much are your rates, what I'm really asking is how much do I have to pay? So there are some categories when you become rated. Now, when you become rated, you could be a discount brand, right, which is cheap. You could be a mass market brand, which is kind of like commoditized. You could be a niche market brand, which is community orientated, passion orientated, or you could be a luxury brand. So there's different ratings. So the key here is that we want to make sure that you are rated where you want to be rated. If you don't want to be seen as a discount brand, you do not want to be rated as a discount brand. If you want to be seen as niche or luxury, you've got to be rated as niche or luxury. So how do you get rated? We get rated through association. And in particular, when someone sees you aligned to 4 other brands around you, that is where they get the cues for them to know how to rate you. So for example, if someone saw you in a Rolls Royce, flying on a private jet, staying at the Four Seasons Hotel, and having a glass of Dom Perignon, they would assume that you are rated as a luxury brand. They would assume that the price point that you're going in at is luxury because they've seen 4 other brands where they associate you are a luxury brand. Now, a great example of someone who did this well is Annie Filipova. Annie has now become one of the top most influential people on LinkedIn in Greece. How did she do it? She really ramped up how much short form content, how much long form content, and she mentioned the big brands that she's been working with in the past, and that got her noticed, it got her known, and it got her rated. For me personally, up until a few years ago, I was putting out a lot of long form content, but I wasn't doing enough short form content. And therefore, I wasn't getting noticed by enough people. I took all the long form content that I'd done, I chopped it up into short form content, and my following exploded. Hundreds of thousands of people started to notice me. Then they watched podcasts and read my books. Then they realized the types of brands that I worked with. I got noticed, I got known, and I got rated. And then the business really took a boost as a result of that. Step 3 is we need signals of interest. We now need people to signal that they're interested in what you're doing. So they've discovered that you've got some intellectual property. They've discovered that you've got a product that is underpinned by proof. They're starting to notice you, know you, and rate you. Now they want to signal that they're interested to know more, and they want to signal that they're interested in being able to access what you have to offer. Now, how is this going to happen? It's going to happen with a magical little device called a landing page. A high converting landing page has 4 key elements that makes it work. The first one is called a hook. A hook is something that hooks people's attention and gets them to engage with the rest of the landing page. So there are 2 great hooks that I love. One is called a frustration hook and one is called a readiness hook. A frustration hook basically says, are you frustrated with blank? Are you frustrated that you're not achieving X, Y, and Z? Are you frustrated that you don't have this going on? So essentially the frustration is that you don't have the intellectual property. The frustration is you don't have the desired outcome that your intellectual property gives people. So first type of hook is a frustration hook, and it names the frustration people would feel if they were lacking your intellectual property. A readiness hook is, are you ready for XYZ result? Are you ready to get this great result? So you might do, are you ready to launch your YouTube channel? Are you ready to increase your sales conversions? Are you ready to spend more time in nature with your family? Right? So this is a hook about, are you ready to achieve this new thing that you want in your life? So the hook is about readiness or it's about frustration. And in just a few words, it gives people the sense that there's something going on that they may miss out on, or there's something going on that would relieve a frustration that they currently have. So that's the first part. This is called the hook. The second part is called the value proposition. The value proposition is where you explain that you've got value that other people want. So this is where you tell people, I can solve this problem, or you can say, these are the things that I know how to improve. These are the things that we know how to measure. This is where you explain how you're going to alleviate the frustration or how you're going to get people the outcome. So you're going to tell people in this value proposition here that you know how to get them to do something better, faster, cheaper, or with more emotional benefits than they currently know how to get. This is called a value proposition. Now, when you explain a value proposition, people have doubts. They're not sure if they can trust you. So therefore, you need to give them your credibility. Now, the credibility could be about your story, your background, or it could be about your research. You might be able to say, here's what the research says, or you might be able to say, here's what I've done in the past. So this might include your headshot and your bio, right? It might be able to tell people who you are, or it might include some statistics, some research, some relevant facts that help people to understand that there's credibility behind what you're saying and there's credibility to back up this value proposition. Now, the final thing that a great landing page needs is a call to action. And a call to action is where you're going to get these signals. When people click the button and they fill in the form, that is a signal of interest. That's called a lead. All business is downstream of lead generation. So we need people to take an action, and a call to action tells them which action to take. So this is where you say, start the assessment, register for the workshop, join the group, register for the waiting list. Whatever the call to action is, this is where you're telling people what to do next. So a few great calls to action could be to attend a webinar, to fill in an assessment, to join a waiting list, or to join a discussion group. Essentially, you're going to call people to action to engage with the product for prospects, which is where they get to learn more. So a great example of this is a guy called David Fraser. David has a wonderful business called Bunkie Life. Bunkie Life sells bunkies, and bunkies are these cabins in the woods in Canada where you buy a prefabricated cabin and you and your family go out into the woods and you set up a cabin, and we call this a Bunkie Life. Now, David's business really took off when he created a landing page called Are You Ready for the Bunkie Life? He used ScoreApp.com to set that up. As a result of having that good landing page, he was able to collect a lot of signaled interest for people who wanted to have a bunkie. He was able to get thousands and thousands of leads, people signaling interest, which takes us on to the next step. So step 4 is sales conversions. Now, in order to make sales, we need to set up something called a lapse dashboard. LAPS stands for leads, appointments, presentations, and ultimately sales. So what we have to do is measure the conversions. How many leads come off our landing page? How many times can we book in a one-to-one or a group sales presentation? How many times can we present our core offering? And how many times do people actually go ahead and buy the core offering? So we're moving people from the product for prospects phase to the core offering phase. The landing page that collected signals of interest, that was the thing that got people to signal interest in the product for prospects. And the sales presentation moves people through from signaled interest to sale by collecting the lead, booking the appointment, presenting them with the education that they need or the insights or the methods that they need to understand the core offering, and then asking for the business and making a sale and signing people up. So we're going from leads to sales, we're going from product for prospects to core offering here. Now, a good LAPS dashboard will keep track of these conversions. So you might have a situation where you have 100 leads, and that might result in 15 people who book an appointment, and that might result in 10 people who see a presentation, and that might result in 3 sales. So you know that you've got 100, 15, 10, 3 as your conversions, and now your job is to see if you can go from 100 to 15 to increase this to maybe 20. Maybe you can increase this to 15. Maybe you can increase this to 5. So your job as the entrepreneur is to come up with ways to get more leads and to get more of those leads to convert to an appointment, to get more of those appointments to sit through the whole presentation and engage with the learning, and to get more of those people who have learned something to engage in a sale. So your job is to improve your LAPS dashboard every single week. Week after week after week. We call it a perfect repeatable week. We want to see leads, appointments, presentations, and sales. And we want to do a lot of brainstorming. How can we get more leads? How can we book more appointments? How can we present more effectively? And how can we secure more sales at the end? Now, especially on these 2 steps, the signaled interest and the sale, the piece of technology that's going to add the most value to you to just automate this whole process is ScoreApp. If you've not tried ScoreApp.com, we've got lots of templates, over 150 templates that you can use for collecting signaled interest. And on the back end of ScoreApp, you've got a mini CRM system that helps you to manage from lead into sale. It helps you to collect those leads, collect all of that data, and then you can export that to your LAPS dashboard, maybe using a Google Sheet to begin with, or using a CRM system if you're a bigger business. And now you've got a really easy automated way of generating signaled interest and converting that to sales and keeping track of that on a LAPS dashboard. So if you've not done so already, get a free account at ScoreApp.com that will help you with all of this. Okay, the final step I want to talk about today is where we're going to scale this up. So this is where we're going to leverage all of the assets that we've created so far, and we're going to do it at a greater scale. We've created a product that is underpinned by proof. We've got intellectual property that we've unpacked into a product for prospects and a core offering. We've gone out to get attention. At this point, we've got into a regular rhythm of putting out 11 pieces of short form content that link to 2 to 7 hours worth of long form content that references 4 brands that I've heard of that rates you highly. We're sending people from attention over to signaled interest through landing pages. Those landing pages are generating leads, and then we're managing a sales process of leads, appointments, presentations, and sales. And finally, we want to do that at a bigger scale. We want more and more people engaging with all of that. So we need to scale up. So how are we going to do that? First, we need to calculate something called an allowable cost per sale, and then we need an allowable cost per lead. Once we have our LAPS dashboard and we've figured out how many leads turn into sales, we can figure out what is the allowable cost per sale that we can keep spending over and over and over again in order to grow the business. So for example, let's say your core offering is $5,000 and you're happy to spend 15% on generating a sale. So you could say, okay, I'm happy to spend $750 on generating a sale. So now we know that the allowable cost per sale is $750. So if we've collected data from our LAPS dashboard, we know that 3 out of 100 people are going to buy. So if we generate 100 leads, we would expect to see 3 sales. So we know that if it was 1 in 100, we would have to have an allowable cost per lead of $7.50. But because we get 3 out of 100, it's going to be $22.50 as our allowable cost per lead, which means anywhere that we can spend $22.50 and generate a lead means that we are going to be within our allowable cost per sale. Now, the good news is that often you can spend $22.50 and generate a lead on Instagram. You can do that on Facebook. You can do that probably on LinkedIn. In fact, in many cases, if you've got good content online, if you've got good intellectual property, you'll see that you can generate leads for well under $10 per lead. So long as you're within your allowable cost per lead and allowable cost per sale, you can spend money to scale up. As you probably have guessed, the final step is to spend money. This is to engage in paid promotions. So paid promotions would be ads, where you spend money on advertising. You might do Google ads, Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, X ads, any of those ads. You can also do joint venture partnerships where you pay influencers or you pay other organizations to promote you. You could do paid outreach. This is where you pay for someone to literally call people, or you might pay for someone to send DMs. You might pay to be featured on an email campaign. You might also do sponsorships. So you could sponsor somebody's event. You could sponsor somebody's newsletter. You could sponsor somebody's YouTube channel. So you've got ads, you've got joint ventures, you've got outreach, you've got sponsorship. These are all examples of paid promotions. But paid promotions only work when you know your allowable cost per sale and your allowable cost per lead, and that you can track the amount of money that you're paying back to your allowable cost per sale. Now, what we then need to do is just slowly ratchet it up. So what we do is we say, I can afford to spend $10,000 this month. I'm going to spend the $10,000 on ads, make sure that the allowable cost per lead is accurate, make sure the allowable cost per sale is translating through, make sure that we're achieving the allowable cost per lead and the allowable cost per sale. And then next month you might say, I can spend $12,000 on ads. And then the next month, maybe $15,000, and maybe the next month, $20,000. And then you could spend some money on promotions and sponsorships and other different activities, always checking that you're within your allowable cost per lead and your allowable cost per sale. So that's a 5-step framework that a lot of people have paid me a lot of money to talk them through. And essentially, the coaching session that I would have with you as a new entrepreneur, and you just paid me $10,000, a lot of our conversation would be about your proof story and your intellectual property and how you productize that, how you get more attention, how you get more signals of interest, how you get more sales, and how you scale up. And largely, I've just given that to you for free. If you enjoyed this, please share it with another entrepreneur that you know, and you're going to really enjoy staying subscribed to this channel because I'm sharing a lot of the stuff that people pay me for free on this YouTube channel. Click like and subscribe, give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment below, and I look forward to seeing you next time. I hope your business is successful.